Uh, the webinar will start in 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Pero dahil kami ay nasa akademiko,
Kailangan
pinag-aaralan
natin
namin
matingnan
yung
kung
mga
ano talaga ang kailangan natin not only for ourselves but for a people as a whole.
Resilience ng mga Pilipino towards the collective effort among communities
not to blame anybody.
and the strengthening of
Resilience Live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the first session of the Resilience Live webinar. My name is Marcos Rosales and I will be your host for today. The Resilience Live webinar series is brought to you by the UP NOAA Center and the UP Resilience Institute in partnership with UNESCO International Geoscience Program. Together, the UP NOAA Center and the UNESCO International Geoscience Program seek to explore geoheritage as a tool for developing resilience to natural hazards. Our speaker for today is none other than one of UPRI's very own senior geologists, Mr. Richard Ibanez. Richard Ibanez holds a master's degree in geology and is currently a PhD candidate at the National Institute of Geological Sciences, with a dissertation on natural hazards interactions in the Philippines. He is currently serving as the Chief Science Research Specialist of the Education Division of the UP Resilience Institute, overseeing and working on programs that empower stakeholders in the academe, in government, and in communities through education in geohazards and disaster risk reduction. His research publications and presentations include topics on cascading hazards, the crowdsourcing hazard phenomena through online platforms, and visualizing hazard phenomena through UAV imagery and 3D models. Without further ado, I am handing off the spotlight to Mr. Ibanez for his presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, to all of our audience. Thank you, Marcos, for that introduction. So thank you for coming today for my presentation on tapping citizen scientists for hazard mapping and disaster studies. So this is a culmination of a few years of our work at the Volcanotectonics Laboratory and at the UP Resilience Institute. And I'm glad to be able to present this on behalf of my fellow researchers. So to start off, I suppose a lot of you are asking, what is citizen science? So it's become quite an intriguing methodology, intriguing phenomenon these days of how we can tap regular citizens, those who don't practice science on an everyday on a daily basis, much unlike other career researchers and scientists. What can they do to contribute to the body of knowledge or the body of science? So first, we define citizen science as a practice of public participation and collaboration in scientific research to increase scientific knowledge. So again, we know that there are researchers and there are scientists who live and breathe science, so to speak, that every day we do research, we study, we do analysis, assessments, and every so often, citizens who consider science as a hard to reach thing or something difficult to practice or something that they don't practice in their everyday life, they're able to contribute to it, they are able to practice it. And when these two groups intersect, when career scientists, so to speak, are able to partner with citizen scientists, then that's where all of this good work can happen. National Geographic defines this as through citizen science, people share and contribute to data monitoring and collection programs. And for some, this may be a novel approach or a novel methodology, but as I'm going to show you today, this has become quite a powerful tool. And in fact, not just a tool, it's a powerful platform for collaboration and getting good science out there. So how do you exactly do citizen science? So first, everyone, I think, learns about the scientific method in primary and elementary education. And when we apply that in our everyday lives, when we are able to apply that to a problem, then you are start doing science, even without having that title of being scientist. You're a citizen scientist when you contribute to the mass collection of scientific data and information that can be used to generate new knowledge or come up with new findings. Also, when you collaborate with career scientists or scientists by profession to do these things, of course, if you're guided by a professional, as it were, then citizen science can become even more powerful and even more potent. So as discussed earlier, this is in support of the Geoheritage program of UNESCO. And these two things come together, citizen science in support of Geoheritage, since Geoheritage is defined, coming from their website, as the knowledge, communication, and protection of the Earth's value to society. And Geoheritage protects the Earth's environment, while also protecting its people, helping them to know their landscape and to understand their hazards and to manage risks. And when we have regular citizens, when we have the public doing citizen science, they are more readily observing and assessing the things around them. And this is even more so important when it comes to hazards. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of hazard processes that occur every now and then. People experience flooding, they see landslides. As I'm about to present, they experience volcanic eruption. And of course, these are all very scary and very dangerous events and processes. But when we have citizens looking at the science behind these hazards, then it supports how people are more able to appreciate and understand the landscape and the ongoing processes around them. And for the scientists' part, we need citizen science, simply put, because there are not enough scientists. And this is particularly true in the Philippines. I failed to present the numbers here, but our number of scientists per number of population is much lower than the global average. There's also not enough instruments and observation points. So this is also another side of being a third world country, is that we don't put enough resources into the kinds of instrumentation that can very accurately monitor all of the hazards that we are experiencing. As I'm about to share in the next few slides, there are also some phenomena that very quickly disappear before the data can be collected by instruments or scientists, or in this case, geologists, who would go out into the field. And therefore, the residents, the public, the citizen scientists who are already there on location can observe and collect that data that we need before it's gone. And as we all know, in science, generally more data is always better. So this allows us to collect a larger sample size, a larger area, more data points. Yes, there can be some error in all of that data being collected, but if it's done following a certain methodology, then there are ways to clean out the data. And as mentioned earlier, it really empowers citizens to employ science in their everyday lives. Again, we focus here on citizen scientists applying or using science to observe hazards around them. But it doesn't have to be hazards. It can be just regular everyday phenomenon. And so we contextualize this for using or for observing disasters in the Philippines. It's timely to start using citizen science here in the Philippines, particularly because we are also one of the top users of the internet. So everyone has a smartphone across social classes. Almost everyone has access to the internet and to devices. And this has become a key platform in conducting citizen science and in collecting data from our citizen scientists. Now, we observe natural hazards in the context of disasters, since here in the Philippines, a lot of the disasters are caused by the many high magnitude natural hazards that impact us annually. And we do this as a research and response to these disasters. When we respond to these disasters, we often also advise local government units. We provide science-backed assessments and recommendations of where to evacuate, where not to evacuate, and if these hazard processes are expected to continue, if more landslides are expected, if more earthquakes or aftershocks are expected. And of course, we also collect this data for modeling and mapping. As we know, our preparation for hazards and disasters is facilitated by our ability to understand and locate where they may potentially happen. And in understanding past disasters and past hazards, then we can be more prepared for the future. And this part is where citizen scientists may come in again, that geologists and other scientists may not always collect all of the data that we need, especially in the aftermath or even during a disaster. As discussed, the Philippines is a very disaster-prone country, especially those caused by natural hazards. We have high seismicity and volcanic activity. We have a lot of tropical cyclones. As we make this presentation, there's one or two. At least one super typhoon in the area right now. We have landslides, which are regularly triggered by these storms or by earthquakes. And many cities and towns are exposed to all of these extreme hazards by the nature of where these cities and towns have been put up beside rivers, along valleys and such. And a lot of our disasters are weather related. Again, we have a current super typhoon in the area. A lot of these landslides, flooding are caused by extreme weather. And due to the high frequency of these weather disturbances, as opposed to, I guess, much of the rest of the world, then we also extreme a lot of these very large hazards. One such example was in 2009 by Typhoon Ketsana, local name Ondoy. I assume everyone here remembers or has heard of this event. It was unprecedented at the time. Several millions of dollars in damages, more than 600 dead, and 5 million people affected. In particular, because this caused very significant flooding in the nation's capital, where of course a large proportion of the population resides in. Facebook was just getting started at this time, I think. And a lot of people were stranded, entire barangays, entire villages were submerged, and rescuers were very simply overwhelmed. And the internet, the start of social media became a good platform for getting calls for help out. So at the time, a lot of groups, a lot of people who wanted to help were very simply monitoring social media for calls for help. And this is when one of our first, or this is the first, I think, crowdsourcing initiative launched on the internet that we had in the research laboratory, wherein we put up a Google Maps platform for people to put in how high the flood was in their particular location during the height of Ondoy. So we were able to disseminate this Google Maps through, well, Friendster, Facebook, the first version of Facebook. We also put it out through text messaging. It was picked up by the media, so it was shown in newspapers and online articles. And the more exposure the Google Maps had, the more data we were able to collect. This is the example of this is the biggest article that was put out on the topic. So this was in the Philippine Daily Inquirer. And as you can see, the article is below. There's our executive director, Dr. Lagmay, who became very young at the time. And this would eventually lead to more research and the very start of the flood modeling that continues up to today. So these were, if you can put up the historical event on the internet, why not put up the actual flood maps on the website so that people have access to it. And then this was validated using those information that was taken from the original crowdsourcing initiative on Google Maps. That website, Nababaha, and a number of other individual research projects would all come together eventually in 2013 to form the project NOAA, which is, as you know, the nationwide operational assessment of hazards, wherein many different hazard maps, hazard models, and even the original crowdsourcing tools were all brought together. And this crowdsourced data for getting actual hazard information, it continues to prove invaluable since, as any modeler or mapper would know, models are never perfect. They can represent actual phenomenon and actual events only so much. And it's always an important thing to validate these maps and these models against actual data. And since you're covering an entire country with hazard maps and hazard models, it's a tall order to get all of this ground data anywhere disasters happen. The second successful time that we initiated a crowdsourced data campaign was in the during and the immediate aftermath of the 2020 Taal eruption. So for context, the Taal volcano erupted last January 12, 2020, a couple of months before the lockdown. There were 39 who died, several hundred millions in agricultural and livestock damage, and it forced the evacuation of course, everyone who was residing within the island and in the surrounding barangays of Taal Lake. So again, more context, it was a phreatomagmatic eruption of VI4, I believe, that threw up a lot of volcanic material into the air. So before this, Taal erupted several decades earlier in 1977, and this forced the evacuation of communities within 14 kilometers of the main crater. So covered within these 14 kilometers were several towns, several barangays, as you can see in the pictures above. This is the coastal town of San Nicolas. These are drone images we got 2 weeks after, and it was a complete ghost town. This is because of first of all, the threat of subsequent eruptions, and second, because a lot of ashfall had already dropped onto the surrounding areas. And this ash would reach several hundreds of kilometers north into Luzon. And so this ashfall and this thickness of ash, we expected to disappear very shortly after the eruption. It's not like a landslide that when deposited, you expect it to hang around for several more weeks or months. Ash would very much disappear in the next few hours to days. In fact, just the day after the eruption, Filipinos, being very resilient, were already on the roofs of their houses sweeping off the ash, which is for good reason, because these ash might collapse the roofs. So it was critical for us to map and get that data. You could posit the extent of the ashfall using satellite imagery, but you cannot get the thickness of the ashfall in the affected areas using the satellite imagery. So we turned again to Google Forms and Google Maps, and the much more widely used Facebook this time, as opposed to 2009 and Twitter. We used this hashtag Itala ang Taal Ash. Hashtags were not something we had again in the first iteration. This roughly records to record Taal's ash. This time we took a different approach using Google Forms for those who were spatially challenged or might not know how to input data into Google Maps. We had a very wide social media campaign. We put in instructions in local language. Our friends at AGHAM, another science organization, created these infographics so that the reach would be wider. And these are examples of the kinds of data that we were able to collect. So at various points, people took pictures with their rulers or whatever they had that you could assume the thickness or the length of. And this is the results. And since this is crowdsourced data, of course, we do not claim ownership over it. And if you scan the QR code on the left, this is still data that you can see online and that you can use. So this is this data point, as you can see, is one example of an area about 50 kilometers or less from Taal volcano. And as you can see, even just from this initial spread of data, we can already see where the ash went, how thick it was in several locations. And this was really useful because while we were able to go out in the field, we were able to go into the 14-kilometer danger zone to collect the data that you see on your screen, along with our colleagues from the Earth Resources Laboratory. We were just a team of, say, 10 people, and we could only collect so much data. And it was really the crowdsourced ashfall data that proved useful in extrapolating the data that we collected from near Taal. We also correlated this with other data, of course, those who published remotely sensed data. So this one is from the Stamina for Space program. They published this on their website, as you can see on the bottom right. They tracked the effusion of the volcanic effusion in the ash and the tephra northwards. It was consistent with the crowdsourced data. High-resolution images were only available for the immediate surroundings of Taal, but not further north. As you can see from the bottom right satellite image, because of the clouds, natural clouds, and those that were generated by Taal, there were really a lot of areas that our remote sensing or satellite images could not penetrate. So all of this data, the ground data collected by geologists, the remotely sensed data, and the crowdsourced data, when all put together, really formed a good picture of the impacts or the aftermath of Taal. And we were able to get a publication out of that. So as you can see here in the upper left, this was published in the 2022. And we put all of those things together to get the spread and the thicknesses and the reach of the tephra and ashfall. And something we've discussed with colleagues who are also into crowdsourcing, not necessarily fellow geologists, is that it's very hard to get published data out of crowdsourced data. Of course, there are those issues of if the data is correct. You know, if the citizen scientists who submitted it were following the scientific method, were applying the proper methodologies for getting assessments. So we were very happy to be able to put out a very good paper that incorporated heavily data from our citizen scientists. Another ongoing initiative right now of the Resilience Institute are the publicly owned, citizen scientist-owned seismographs. So as we know, of course, in every country, there are state-run seismological agencies in charge of monitoring earthquakes. But then with the advent of miniature technology now and microcomputers, you can actually now own a mini seismograph for yourself. And putting all of these things together, there is now a network of citizen science seismographs, which you can access in the links as shown. So ShakeNet is Raspberry Shake is for a global network, and the second link is for one that's being developed right here in the University of the Philippines. So that's what the mini seismograph looks like. It's relatively cheap, and you can place it in the ground, and you can collect data for yourself and for the citizen science community. And this has become really useful for scientists at different levels. Even if you're just an undergraduate or graduate student, you can start developing or studying the data from the seismographs. Seasoned researchers and postgraduate level researchers are also using this to glean information on not just earthquakes, but other phenomenon that puts out vibrations, whether it's volcanic earthquakes, landslides, even rain. These are all now being collected by a network owned by citizen scientists. So what are some of the things that we've learned applying citizen science in all of these various endeavors? This is definitely the time for crowdsourcing initiatives, and for citizen scientists to submit data, where before paper and news media were more prevalent. Data input had to go through desktops and laptops, not even smartphones. And even if you were able to collect data, these did not include pictures and images. And now, with the internet everywhere, and with everyone having social media and hashtags having that ability to bring topics and people and content together, this is all becoming very powerful. Powerful data collection tools. Everyone has a smartphone on them now. In fact, several devices on them that can take images, collect data, and upload almost instantaneously. And this level of data collection, and not just data collection, but appreciation of data and of the science, is now accessible to all sectors of society. Smartphones and the internet are widely accessible. We do have to recognize some of the strengths and limitations. Yes, crowdsourcing data has a very wide reach and scope. You can collect lots of data in a very short amount of time, and you hope that the data set can correct itself. In the original iteration of the flood map, a lot of tricksters would put pins in the middle of the ocean and say that it's still flooded here. So there are those instances that some people will put in data for their own laughs. But again, you hope that you believe in the public good, and that a lot of them are putting data properly, and it can correct that kind of those kinds of data. And as it heavily supplements scientists' data and observation platforms. Of course, there is still need for verification. So actually, it's best that you at the onset of any crowdsourcing initiative is you put out good instructions, clear instructions, and preferably in the local language, so that the need to validate later on is less. Data may come in incomplete, and often you will need to interpret that data, which is why the pictures help in this respect, because you can interpret the pictures yourself. And then again, you have to watch out for malicious data entries. As we discussed, it's very difficult to use this as a primary data set, especially in the physical sciences. But as we've shown, it can be done, and it can be very helpful and important. With this, we hope to empower citizen scientists. We can expand the citizen scientist experience with and retention of Earth processes and natural hazards through observation, recording, and understanding. So for those many people who experienced the Taal ashfall, I'm sure those who collected the data were able to observe a little closer and appreciate that the thickness at their location, it's not as heavy as closer to Taal. With improved feedback mechanisms, there is a very high potential for improving science communication and infusing science into the public's daily life. Moving forward, if we were to do it again, and some of the improvements that we would do, we would like to provide knowledge products and resources after data is collected. So something that we wish we had done is to involve the citizen scientists more. It felt we do acknowledge that it was much like a one-way street, that we collected data from the citizen scientists and then that's it. If they saw the publication a year or two later, then that would be nice. But if they did it, then there would be no feedback. So it would have been good to, after collecting data from them, we give them reading materials now. Okay, thank you for your submission. Find out more about ashfall and the hazards. But of course, it was a very stressful time for everyone, and we didn't have the time to put that material together. Example. And we do wish that there's a way to communicate the results to respondents. Those who left email addresses with us during the data collection, we did inform about the publication after and thank them, of course, for their contribution. But again, this can be done more smoothly and with more intent in later iterations. And finally, it's still best to translate into local language. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Rich, for that very interesting and informative presentation. I'm sure our audience has learned a lot about citizen science and how we as citizen scientists can use technology readily available to majority of Filipinos to contribute to generating new knowledge on the hazards that affect our communities. But I'm even more certain that you have piqued the interest of quite a few of our attendees. So now comes the portion of our webinar where we will be opening the floor for any questions any of our attendees may have for Mr. Ibanez. A few reminders for our Q&A session, please. Use the Zoom React button to raise your hand and wait for the host, me, to call your name and unmute you before speaking. For those who would prefer it, we will also entertain questions sent to the chat box. Those watching via FB Live or YouTube may also comment their questions below. And due to limited time, we may not be able to entertain all questions. You may, however, send them to the UPRI Facebook page as messages. These will be forwarded to Mr. Ibanez after this session. So I now open the floor for a question and answer session. Our first question seems to be coming from Mr. Fanny Natividad. I'll be allowing you to talk now. Mr. Natividad, I believe you're still muted on your end. Mr. Natividad? Okay, I guess we'll take our first question from our Q&A chat box. So this one is from Juana Vegas from the Geological Survey of Spain. You citizen scientists in 2021 in the La Palma eruption, but we have not full response from people directly affected. Did we have a similar response in 2020? Sir Rich.
Yes, so we're very happy that we had a very good response during the eruption. So again, it might stem from Filipinos being very avid netizens. But another factor that may have come into this is because the volcano that erupted, it's very close to the national capital in Metro Manila. And also the area between the volcano and the capital are very heavily populated areas. So just by the number of people affected and the likelihood of people seeing our call for data, it was very good. So that's why we received an adequate amount of data points.
Thank you so much, Sir Rich, for answering that question. Um, do we have any other questions at the moment? Let's take a look. I believe we have another anonymous question. Oh no, we have one question from Mr. Ben Van Wyk de Vries. Sir, you are now unmuted and may ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Marcus. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Ben. Good to see you.
Very good to see you. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. My first question is, you partly answered it in your conclusions, but in the introduction, you talked about people using science in their normal life, and that's a way of being a citizen scientist. And in the conclusions, you were saying it would be good to give more feedback to people. Is there a link there where we could help citizens be more sciencey in their own lives with the feedback? And then for the next Taal eruption or flood or whatever, have a group of people who are even more trained and ready for participating in this.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Ben. I think one of the reasons that we get such high engagements during disasters is because, of course, it's a disaster. People are on social media trying to see what's happening, getting videos of the very spectacular eruptions of Taal. And I think it's more difficult to get that kind of engagement during the everyday life because it's more mundane. And while I would like to say that maybe we can launch an app where people would go and there'd be information there, or we can have social media pages, actively. There are a lot of social media pages here in the Philippines that put out, weather forecasts, and this has led to the advent of a lot of pseudoscientists. But, that's another story. But I guess the point is, it's much harder to get people into science thinking when it's the everyday life. And sad as it is, during disasters, it's such an opportune moment to get them involved and get them interested. And I guess we can continue and try using social media as a platform for keeping that momentum going and getting people interested. But it's very hard to keep that interest into something that's more everyday.
Marcus, am I able to ask another question following on from that? I can't hear you, Marcus.
Yeah, I think he
Oh,
said.
hello. Sorry. Yeah, yes. You may ask a follow-up question.
Okay, just a quick one to follow that up. The other thing I noted down is I know when I've been in the Philippines, I've been to Maha talking on TV in the show, what was it, Red Alert.
Red Alert.
And I know that's not the only activity you have, but I think one thing that must help the citizen science is the UP, and especially UPRI, is very present in the media already all the time. So you are known, some of you are known characters in the public sphere. That must help as well.
Yes, so when UPRI was formed, it was really acknowledged that mass media is an excellent channel for getting all of this out. And it's unfortunate actually that the one you mentioned, Red Alert, it's been shut down because the studio closed. But it would have been continuing that, it would have it remains a very potent platform for getting, just having people listen once a week on things, disasters, on hazards. And UP continues to support us with that. So there's TV UP, which has a channel out in some cable platforms. There's a radio program. Our presence in mass media, we try to keep it there, but it's difficult to have people really listen in as a regular thing to that kind of information. People prefer sometimes more entertaining things, unfortunately.
Thank
I
you.
believe we have a few more questions from our YouTube live stream this time. This one is from Hedrick Santiago. He asks, in the context of the Philippines, what can we do to engage more Filipinos to engage in citizen science? That's a great question, I think, Sir Rich.
Make it exciting. Filipino netizens have a knack for wanting to be entertained. Whether it's a fresh scandal or it's politics or something, it's very hard to get them interested in science, in VRR, in hazards, unless it's actively happening. And I don't have a good answer for that yet, because if I did, then we would be doing it already. But at UPRI, we are trying a variety of things. We have creative works, we have songwriting, we're putting up games, we're putting out short form videos. We're trying all approaches. Hopefully, it all adds up in the end.
I believe we have a few more questions in our Q&A chat box. We have one anonymous attendee asking, are there any risks that mass collected scientific data are at best inadmissible and at worst, quote unquote, bad data? The latter potentially leading to incorrect or misleading results.
Yes, so thank you for that question. As presented earlier, so there are actual malicious data points that were submitted. And I think the difference between our 2009 crowdsourcing and the 2020 crowdsourcing is that we had pictures. I think that's one very important point, is because, of course, you can come up with fake words, fake data when it's just typewritten. But when you have a picture, in fact, you don't even have to put in words. You can type a picture, have its location, and then submit it. And then that's enough for us to work with. And as you saw, we were able to publish it in a peer-reviewed journal. So other scientists, other experts in the field reviewed that work and deemed it admissible, deemed it good science. So I think there are safeguards for making sure that the data collected is workable. And barring that, of course, for other kinds of data, there are always statistical tools that can be applied. So with the 2009 data, I believe some computer science people came in and applied statistical analysis to eliminate the bad data when there was better data surrounding that data point. So there's always ways to sift through the data.
Right, that's a great answer. We have one more question, once again from Juana Vegas. So in your opinion, what has been the most effective in getting citizens to cooperate? And have there been previous awareness raising campaigns?
The most effective is having an erupting volcano in your backyard. So again, netizens are more inclined to contribute when there's a big thing happening, and there's a disaster. And again, barring that, it's a bit difficult to get that kind of data, to get that kind of engagement during the mundane everyday. As to if there were awareness raising campaigns, Yes, constantly. The UP Resilience Institute lives and breathes awareness raising campaigns. But again, it's really a challenge to keep the public's attention, to make sure that it's ingrained, that it's practiced in the everyday. And it's something that we strive to do. So during disasters, as much as sad and as much as we don't want that to happen, it's also an opportune moment to make those hazards and those disasters sink into the memory and into the everyday practice of regular citizens.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Rich, for that answer. And thank you also, Juana Vegas, for giving us that question. So at this point, I'd like to encourage everybody else to ask some more questions while Sir Rich is still here in front of us. I'm sure there's a lot that can still be asked to him. Oh, we have another one from another anonymous attendee. So are there any risks that Oh,
No, it's the same.
no, it's the same question. Yeah, it's the same question again. I see. Do we have anybody else who would like to ask a question, maybe from our live audience? Or those of us joining us on YouTube Live, you may also feel free to ask your questions. These will be forwarded to us as the hosts, and we'll be very, very happy to read these aloud for you. All right, so if there is none at this point in time, we now move on to the end of our webinar. Thank you once again to Mr. Richard Ibanez for sharing his time and knowledge with us this afternoon. Thank you again, Sir Rich. Once again, this webinar has been brought to you by the UP NOAA Center and UPRI in partnership with the UNESCO International Geoscience Program. Resilience Live will be held every last Thursday of the month, so mark your calendars. The next session will be on September 28th. Please stay tuned to the UPRI Facebook page for announcements on our next featured topic. Before we officially close this afternoon's webinar, please be reminded that participants will be issued a certificate of attendance once they have answered the evaluation form. You may find the link to the form in the chat box below and the QR code flashed on your screen now. Thank you once again, and see you all at the next session of Resilience Live. Once again, my name is Marcos Rosales, and it has been a pleasure being your host for the afternoon.